Hong Kong experienced a big property boom in the 1970s, and it was in 1978 that the government introduced the home ownership scheme with three objectives in mind, namely to stabilize prices, encourage home ownership, and reserve public housing for people who were in need of it. What the public didn't anticipate was that the scheme was to become the main source of revenue for the housing authority.
居屋可以賺錢，公屋咧就蝕水嘅。過往就公屋係大多數，居屋係少部分嘅。咁但係97年之後咧就倒過嚟，咁所以令到咧呢幾年嘅居屋咧大量生產嘅一個原因啦。樓市冧咗落去，政府為咗托市，咁啊首先係停咗居屋。咁由於居屋嘅部分係最大嘅，咁所以咧而家成為一個政府咧即係自己搬起石頭揼自己腳嘅一個咁樣嘅結果啦。
The financial crisis of 1998 brought the property market spiraling downward. In an effort to arrest the fall, the government introduced a number of measures, including a moratorium on the auctioning of public land, but to no avail. Then 3 years ago came the moratorium on selling home ownership scheme units. That has created a series of problems. Apart from the 4,500 units at the Hung Hom Peninsula and Kingsford Terrace estates, 10,000 brand new units constructed by the Housing Authority have also been put on hold. In some estates, the moratorium came after some units had been sold, and so, including units that the government has repurchased, there are over 20,000 vacant units. Of the vacant units, about 6,600 belong to two estates in Yau Tong, and they're very well built and equipped ones at that. Sitting on top of the MTR station, each unit cost the government $400,000. So the total number of mothballed home ownership scheme units has cost the government an outlay of close to $10 billion, and that's before counting land and administration costs.
一方面，房委會就喺度呻窮，居民咧亦都係極力要求減租，亦都係冇結果嘅。咁啊，政府將啲居屋零一喺度拗，都唔會出售。咁所以呢點咧，確實就真係好難令到公眾能夠接受。
The government, to be fair, is racking its brains as to what to do with the vacant units at its disposal. Under consideration is a plan to turn some of them into rental public housing. Another plan is to use some of them as quarters for the disciplinary services. Yet another is to transform some of them into small hotels. Nothing is definite as yet, however. Meanwhile, there are rates, management fees, electricity bills, and so on to pay.
每年嘅所有個管理費嘅開支咧係5700萬。 嗱，如果由02年開始計，到政府講話要到06年底之後咧，先考慮會出售嘅話咧，都唔知會唔會賣喎。嗱，咁嗰個損失係相當大。咁我粗略計算嘅話咧，如果連埋將來賣之前嘅翻新費用咧，係超過3億。
Mr. Chu has been a plumber and electrician for over 40 years. He says he's never seen so many units left vacant. He also warns that long vacancies will cause problems.
如果有人住嘅，你通常話就潮濕啊，咁打開個窗吹下空氣，咁佢咪唔覺，即係會個快脆乾。如果唔係嘅話咧，地板又好，冷氣機又好，都係一樣。如果你不停咁樣，即係擺喺度，我哋叫話擺喺度漚啊，即係話露天咁擺喺度漚到佢咧，真係你想用嘅時開機佢都唔喐得添。
Mr. Chu says the air conditioners and lifts, if left without maintenance, will cease to work, and the outdoor drains, without any water to drain and exposed to the sun for a long time, will crack sooner or later. Maintenance warranties will expire, and the cost of extensive repairs is likely to be borne by future occupants. Public housing has always been one of the outstanding features to Hong Kong's credit. Indeed, it's been the foundation for much of the stability and prosperity that the territory's enjoyed throughout the years. It provides decent homes for about half the population. It all began with the Christmas Day disaster in 1953. A fire rendered over 50,000 shack dwellers at Shek Kip Mei homeless. While urgently resettling them, the government set about devising an ambitious plan for public housing. The first resettlement estate is still standing. In fact, it was the site chosen by the government for a ceremony to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the public housing policy.
公屋嘅誕生係第一點係悲劇，係第一點係 戲劇性嘅。
Gigi was one of those who survived the fire. Then just a child, she and her family were among the first to be allotted resettlement housing.
煮飯咧就喺出邊咯，就嗰時都好開心嘅，因為煮飯咧大家傾偈啊，成咁樣。我哋嘅沖涼房又喺出邊，乜都喺出邊，好麻煩嘅。佢個個都瞓地下嘅，哇冇空間㗎，個個都我哋咪算威咯。我阿媽整個角仔咯，呢度咪一張床咯，咁呢度可以食飯啊，一部電視啊，壞鬼又唔係咁多嘢。
好多咁嘅房屋都以驚人嘅速度去建造，確係認真速度驚人噃。
Wong Tai Sin was among the first sites chosen for public housing. As for the buildings themselves, the original rather simple 7-story blocks were later replaced by much better structures. Close to the new buildings, there's still striking evidence of the past, some 40 squatter shacks. They were there long before the appearance of public housing estates. Uncle Ho has lived here for more than half a century. He's witnessed the history of public housing, the construction and the reconstruction, but surprisingly, he's still waiting to be housed.
我喺度住呢就係第一個我申請電燈，1954年申請到電，喺62年開始後開始話收嘅，我都62年拜咗白卡，62年嘅白卡。咁啊，拆到而家。
A visit to the squatters area gives you a good idea how many people in Hong Kong lived 50 years ago. To people of the present generation, the living conditions are quite unthinkable. Tap water was only made available about 5 years ago.
樓上咧就嗰啲搬扯晒。
Uncle Ho's shack is run down. The upper floor is vacant. Uncle Ho can't afford any cleaning and patching up himself.
呢啲咁嘅地方都流水㗎，呢個樓底都嗱，我接住晒啲水，咁樣流出揾個窿，我流翻出去嘅咋。呢啲牆咧，而家政府就唔整。
The reason Uncle Ho has been unsuccessful applying for public housing is that his family income, that is money made by the immediate members of his family, not by himself, is over the limit. Mr. Wong has been living with his family in this dilapidated building in Sham Shui Po for over 40 years. The building is old to start with, and with the person living on the flat directly above making indiscriminate structural alterations, Mr. Wong's ceiling is in very bad shape.
就係呢一塊啦，呢一塊咧嗰次咧成塊跌咗落嚟㗎啦，冇就多人，啱啱啲仔女喺度打緊電腦。
Mr. Wong has complained in vain to the owner of the flat above him. As for the future, there's no government redevelopment plan in sight for the area, and Mr. Wong doesn't qualify for public housing.
我而家政府咧有咁多空置嘅居屋嘅話咧，所以我就希望咧可以樓換樓。 換翻件居屋住下。
But the government has no plan to give the unoccupied housing units to the people living in dilapidated buildings.
有部分賠償金額可能係期望住嗰啲嘅小業主可以喺市面買翻一啲嘅私樓嘅。咁我哋其實整個房屋政策裏邊現今嗰個嘅方向都係我哋唔想即係再次投入呢一個地產市場裏邊所謂嘅與民爭利或者係嗰個與私人物業市場裏邊有太多嘅參與。咁所以我哋暫時就唔諗呢一個方向。
公屋搞咗50年。
The government's public housing policy has indeed gone through many revisions and changes in the past 50 years. Despite its early success, measures involving clearance and reconstruction, the home ownership scheme, rents and eligibility have caused considerable controversies and grievances. This particular evening, Michael Sewan, Secretary for Housing, Planning and Lands, is in attendance at a rally at a public housing estate. As he might have expected, he's getting an earful from some disgruntled people.
到而家我哋投訴咗1年，從來冇人去跟進。而家我哋投訴到去孫局長你面前，你都係話你冇辦法處理。咁你叫我哋仲要去邊一個部門啊？到而家嚟講，點解仲係要雙租？點解仲係要佢半租？勤力嘅賺錢啊，係罪嚟㗎，要罰㗎。咁你啊，你去做啊！
我就希望大家明白，我哋唔係同你哋為敵，我點解要係同你喺相處一個對立嘅面？